Today is day 5 for the Come Follow Me study for this week, March 2nd through the 8th. Let God prevail. Genesis 24 through 33. Friday, March 6th, 2026, Genesis 30 through 31. Genesis 30. Jacob marries Bilhah, and she bears Dan and Naphtali. Genesis 31. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. President Gordon B. Hinckley said covetousness is an evil and gnawing disease. President Joseph F. Smith said, We may say we are thankful that the Lord has blessed our neighbor above that which he has blessed us. We may be thankful that the Lord has given to our neighbor greater wisdom and ability to honestly gather to himself, but we should never covet it. We should not be envious, because we are commanded not to be. Genesis 30, 2 through 5. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, Behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife, and Jacob went and lay with her, and Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. Brian Richards said, The celestial city has a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Leah and Rachel chose the names of the 12 gates of the holy city. That is a pretty big responsibility, along with Bilhah and Zilpah. To be matriarchs of the house of Israel was quite a privilege. We should not be surprised, therefore, that the spirit of prophecy rested upon these women as they named their children. Elder Orson Pratt said, The Lord used to give revelation not only to the head of a family, but also to a man's wives. Read, for instance, what the Lord revealed to the wives of Joseph, how he used to reveal a great many things to Rachel, a great many things to Leah, a great many things to Bilhah, and a great many things to Zilpah. These 4 wives were revelators. They were prophetesses. They were individuals that could inquire of the Lord and obtain an answer from him, and we have their revelations recorded in the scriptures. Genesis 30, 6 through 8. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, With great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. Jacob marries Zilpah, and she bears Gad and Asher. Genesis 30, 9 through 13. When Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, A troop cometh, and she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. Leah bears Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Genesis 30:14. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest, and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, Give me, I pray thee, of thy sons mandrakes. The significance of this plant to Rachel and Leah is clear. The Hebrew word translated as mandrake denotes love fruit. The fruit had a pleasant taste and odor and was supposed to ensure conception. The mandrake plant has flesh-colored roots that can sometimes resemble small human figures, which may have inspired superstitions that mandrakes helped with fertility. In other words, the mandrakes were thought to enhance a woman's fertility and ability to have children. Knowledge of this belief helps explain the interchange between Rachel and Leah. Rachel desired the mandrakes so that she could at last bear children of her own. Genesis 30:15. And she said unto her, Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, Therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. As has already been seen, there was a fierce competition between the sisters in this regard. Leah's response was, therefore, equally natural. She indicated that Rachel had already taken her husband, which probably meant only that Rachel had the first place in his affections. Some scholars, however, believe that this passage means that Jacob actually lived in Rachel's tent rather than Leah's tent. The one advantage Leah had was her ability to bear children, while Rachel could not. In essence, she told Rachel that it would be foolish for her to give Rachel her mandrakes and help her have children, for this would only lessen Leah's one advantage. So Rachel made a counteroffer. She promised that she would encourage Jacob to go to Leah that night if she, Rachel, could have the mandrakes. Leah agreed and told Jacob. Genesis 30:16 through 18. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, Thou must come in and lie with me. For surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived, and bare Jacob the fifth son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. Out of the agreement, Leah conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. She later bore another son and Jacob's daughter Dinah. Genesis 30:19 through 21. And Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun. And afterward she bare a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Although not stated specifically, the record implies that the mandrakes did nothing for Rachel. Finally, Rachel did conceive, but it was not because of mandrakes. Rather, God hearkened to her and opened her womb. Rachel conceives and bears Joseph. Genesis 30:22 through 23. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. 2 Peter 3. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise. Alma 37. For God is powerful to the fulfilling of all his words. For he will fulfill all his promises which he shall make unto you. For he has fulfilled his promises which he has made unto our fathers. Genesis 30:24. And she called his name Joseph, and said, The Lord shall add to me another son. The scriptures in this chapter indicate that each child born to Jacob was given a name which reflected the feelings of his parents. There was a tremendous competitive spirit between the wives. Being able to bear a male child for their husband was a great honor. Rachel apparently was very sad that she did not have a child until later in life. When she finally bore a son, the name she gave him indicated her feeling for him and the hope she had in the future. The 12 sons of Jacob are listed below. Reuben, reason for name, joy for having a son. Simeon, because the Lord heard that she was hated. Levi, this time will my husband be joined unto me. Judah, now I will praise the Lord. Dan, God hath judged me. Naphtali, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister. Gad, Leah said, a troop cometh. Asher, Leah said, happy am I. Issachar, God hath given me my reward. Zebulun, now will my husband dwell with me. Joseph, the Lord shall add to me another son. Benjamin, you are the son of my right hand. Brian Richards said, please note the footnote. For the meaning of Joseph's name, it means 1 to add, 2 to take away, and 3 to gather. Joseph is the most famous of all of his brothers. He was the chosen son with the coat of many colors. His descendants would also play a prominent role in the fulfillment of the covenant of Abraham, wherein all the world would be blessed. Within the meaning of Joseph's name, we can see both immediate and latter-day prophecy fulfilled with remarkable accuracy. Joseph was a blessed addition to Jacob and Rachel, but he was taken away by the violence of his brothers selling him into Egypt. Yet in the end, He was the means of gathering the whole family to Egypt, saving them from certain death by famine. In the days of Lehi, Joseph's descendants were taken away from the rest of Israel as a branch taken from the mother olive tree. Their prophets and scripture provided a beautiful addition to the Jewish record of the Bible, which has helped to gather the house of Israel back into the fold. Joseph Smith likewise added, President Dallin H. Oaks said, Joseph Smith taught that God will guide his children by giving new additions to the canon of scriptures. The Book of Mormon is such an addition. So are the Revelations in the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price. Was taken away. Doctrine and Covenants 135. To seal the testimony of this book and the Book of Mormon, we announce the martyrdom of Joseph Smith the prophet and Hyrum Smith the patriarch. They were shot in Carthage jail on the 27th of June, 1844, about 5:00 p.m., by an armed mob. And will gather. Doctrine and Covenants 103. Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Therefore I will raise up unto my people a man, who shall lead them like as Moses led the children of Israel. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that my servant Joseph Smith Jr. is the man to whom I liken the servant, to whom the Lord of the vineyard spake in the parable which I have given unto you. 1 Nephi 22. Wherefore he will bring them again out of captivity, and they shall be gathered together to the lands of their inheritance, and they shall be brought out of obscurity and out of darkness, and they shall know that the Lord is their Savior and their Redeemer, the Mighty One of Israel. Elder Heber C. Kimball said, Darkness will cover the earth, and gross darkness the minds of the people. The judgments of God will be poured out on the wicked to the extent that our elders from far and near will be called home, or in other words, the gospel will be taken from the Gentiles and later on carried to the Jews. The western boundary of the state of Missouri will be swept so clean of its inhabitants that, as President Young tells us, when you return to that place, there will not be left so much as a yellow dog to wag his tail. Before that day comes, however, the saints will be put to a test that will try the integrity of the best of them. The pressure will become so great that the more righteous among them will cry unto the Lord day and night until deliverance comes. For the time is coming when we will be mixed up in these now peaceful valleys, to the extent that it will be difficult to tell the face of a saint from the face of an enemy to the people of God. Then, brethren, look out for the great seed, for there will be a great sifting time, and many will fall. For I say unto you, there is a test coming, and who will be able to stand? This church has before it many close places through which it must pass before the work of God is crowned with victory. To meet the difficulties that are coming, it will be necessary for you to have knowledge of the truth of this work for yourselves. The difficulties will be of such character that the man or woman who does not possess this personal knowledge or witness will fall. If you have not got the testimony, live right and call upon the Lord and cease not until you obtain it. If you do not, you will not stand. Then the prophet Joseph and others will make their appearance, and those who have remained faithful will be selected to return to Jackson County, Missouri, and take part in the building of that beautiful city, the New Jerusalem. President Brigham Young said, after the people have been tried, yes, tried, then will Joseph the prophet lead this people to Jackson County. Brian Richards said, the Lord teaches through symbolism. Just as great literature is full of foreshadowing, the Bible is full of types and shadows of things to come. Examining Jacob's relationship with Laban as a type for Israel before Pharaoh of Egypt turns out to be quite interesting. Jacob traveled to Haran from the land of his inheritance, just as the Israelites left Canaan for Egypt. Jacob served Laban. Israel served Pharaoh. Initially, Jacob was well received by Laban, but Laban's favor didn't last, especially when it was time for Jacob to leave. Initially, Pharaoh was kind to the Israelites and blessed them, but the last Pharaoh turned against them. Jacob was blessed with a great posterity. The children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty. Jacob was established and blessed as a shepherd, but served Laban. The Israelites were sheep herders in Goshen, yet subservient to Pharaoh. Laban was blessed while Jacob dwelt with him. Pharaoh and all of Egypt were blessed by the Israelites. Jacob wanted to leave, but his wages were changed 10 times. Pharaoh's heart was hardened 10 times. The Lord blessed Jacob to be blessed with great riches and cattle upon leaving Laban. The Israelites borrowed riches of their neighbors and spoiled the Egyptians. Jacob seeks to leave Haran for the land of his inheritance. Israel seeks to leave Egypt for their land of promise. Laban pursues Jacob after he leaves. Pharaoh pursues after the Israelites. God protects Jacob from the wrath of Laban. God protected Israel from the armies of Pharaoh. Jacob works for Laban for wages of cattle and sheep. Genesis 30:25-33. And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, Send me away, that I may go unto mine own place, and to my country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. And he said, Appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said unto him, Thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed thee since my coming. And now when shall I provide for mine own house also? And he said, What shall I give thee? And Jacob said, Thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and spotted cattle, and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and of such shall be my hire. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. The prophet Joseph Smith said, It is a time-honored adage that love begets love. Let us pour forth love, show forth all kindness unto all mankind, and the Lord will reward us with everlasting increase. Cast our bread upon the waters, and we shall receive it after many days, increased to 100-fold. Genesis 30:34-43. And Laban said, Behold, I would it might be according to thy word. And he removed that day the he-goats that were ring-streaked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar, and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white streaks in them, and made the white appear, which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters of the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-streaked, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not unto Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. And when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and menservants, and camels, and asses. Laban made an agreement that Jacob could keep all the animals in his flock that had irregular colored coats. So to increase his flock, Jacob placed stripped and speckled branches in front of the animals while they mated. There was a superstition that what an animal looked at while it mated would affect the appearance of its offspring. The effectiveness of this technique is never questioned in the account, but later Jacob gives all the credit for the miracle to the Lord. Divine intervention certainly played a part. In any event, Jacob's herds grew and the Lord blessed him. Also, Jacob's separation of the flocks follows principles of good animal husbandry and would have increased the likelihood of having multicolored animals. Doctrine and Covenants 123. Wherefore, dearly beloved brethren, let us cheerfully do all things that lie in our power, and then may we stand still with the utmost assurance to see the salvation of God. Genesis 31. The Lord commands Jacob to return to Canaan, and Jacob departs secretly. Genesis 31:1. And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. Brian Richards said, will Jacob be able to endure the unfair treatment from his in-laws? He is falsely accused by Laban's sons, treated unfairly by Laban, and even had reason to fear bodily harm. Will Jacob respond with the integrity of Abraham and Isaac? Will we? The prophet Joseph Smith said, God hath said that he would have a tried people, that he would purge them as gold. We think also it will be a trial of our faith equal to that of Abraham, and that the ancients will not have whereof to boast over us in the day of judgment, as being called to pass through heavier afflictions, that we may hold an even weight in the balance with them. Genesis 31:2-7. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flocks, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the Lord my father hath been with me. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father hath deceived me, and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. Jacob's comment that Laban changed his wages 10 times cannot be documented in the record. That is, 10 times cannot be counted. But the nature of Laban makes it not unlikely that once Jacob began to prosper, Laban kept changing the terms of their agreement. Nevertheless, the Lord continued to bless Jacob temporarily. Genesis 31:8-15. If he said thus, the speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said thus, the ring-streaked shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring-streaked. Thus God hath taken away the cattle of your father, and given them to me. And it came to pass, at the time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up mine eyes, and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-streaked, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. It is interesting that both Rachel and Leah agreed that Jacob was justified in leaving Laban. They also pointed out that they had received nothing from their father because of his covetous nature. One commentator explained their bitterness. The dowry was an important part of marriage. We meet it first in Jacob, who worked 7 years for Laban to earn a dowry for Rachel. The pay for this service belonged to the bride after her dowry, and Rachel and Leah could indignantly speak of themselves as having been sold by their father, because he had withheld from them their dowry. It was the family capital. It represented the wife's security in case of divorce where the husband was at fault. If she were at fault, she forfeited it. She could not alienate it from her children. There are indications that the normal dowry was about 3 years' wages. The dowry thus represented funds provided by the father of the groom or by the groom through work, used to further the economic life of the new family. If the father of the bride added to this, it was his privilege and customary, but the basic dowry was from the groom or his family. The dowry was thus the father's blessing on his son's marriage, or a test of the young man's character in working for it. Genesis 31:16. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours, and our children's, now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. It is significant to note that Jacob counseled with his wives on the important move he was contemplating. Often, modern scholars claim that women in the Old Testament were of low status and were treated as property by their husbands. But this example and others like it show that such was not the case. President Howard W. Hunter said, when Jacob was instructed to return to the land of Canaan, which meant leaving all for which he had worked many years, he called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was and explained what the Lord had said. The reply of Rachel was simple and straightforward and indicative of her commitment. Whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. We have then examples from the scriptures of how we should consider and evaluate the commandments of the Lord. If we choose to react like Joshua, Abraham, Rebekah, and Rachel, our response will be simply to go and do the thing that the Lord has commanded. Genesis 31:17 through 19. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting, which he had gotten in Padan Aram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. There is much debate among scholars about what the images were that were stolen by Rachel and what they represented. The Hebrew word, which is sometimes used for small images of false gods, is teraphim. Some translators render the word as household gods. Was Laban an idolater? If so, why would Jacob go all the way back to Haran to find a wife if they were idolaters like the Canaanites? Others believe they were astrological devices used for telling the future, but this suggestion raises the same question. One scholar theorized that these images were somehow tied in with the legal rights of inheritance. If this theory is correct, the possessor of the teraphim had the right to inherit the father's property. This circumstance would explain why Rachel stole the images, since her father had stolen her inheritance. It would also explain Laban's extreme agitation over their loss and Jacob's severe penalty offered against the guilty party. Rachel may have been trying to secure for her family the inheritance she and Leah felt their father owed them. Genesis 31:20 through 21. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. Laban pursues him, they resolve their differences and make a covenant of peace. Genesis 31:22 through 23. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. Brian Richards said, we return to the foreshadowing theme of Jacob's departure. We can see that Jacob leaving Haran is a type for Israel leaving Egypt. Just as Pharaoh would gather his army to pursue Moses and the Israelites, so Laban gathered his brethren to chase after Jacob. We ask, what does Laban have to complain about? He has been using Jacob as a slave for 20 years, and that is not enough. Just as God helped the Israelites spoil the Egyptians, Jacob would take the spoil of Laban's ring-streaked cattle, and Rachel would spoil him of his images. Laban was furious. He hadn't been wronged by Jacob, but his greed and avarice are in full sway. Moses promised Israel, fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord. The Lord shall fight for you. The Lord would fight for Jacob as well. no harm would come upon any of Jacob's party. Genesis 31:24 through 30. And God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said unto him, Take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said unto Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with tabret, and with harp, and hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good nor bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longedst after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Brian Richards said, Laban admitted to Jacob, It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. Laban was angry enough to either kill Jacob or take away his daughters with all his goods and leave him destitute. Divine intervention was the only thing that would protect Jacob, and so Laban is given instruction in a dream. He didn't have a vision because he was righteous. When he makes his claim that what he really wanted was to send Jacob off with a party and kiss his daughters goodbye, don't believe him. He pretended to have a magnanimous spirit. He pretends to have a generous disposition. He pretends to do the right thing. Jacob knew his heart. Genesis 31:31 through 35. And Jacob answered and said unto Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldest take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent, and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images, and put them in the camel's furniture, and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searcheth, but found not the images. Camille Frank Olson said, Going last to Rachel suggests that Laban suspected her least of all. Rachel hid the teraphim in the camel's furniture, perhaps in a compartment under the saddle, and was sitting upon the furniture when Laban entered. Her pretense of female incapacitation afforded her an excuse not to move away from the hiding place in order to allow her father to search the furniture. The scene suggests that a woman was granted particular privacy and protection from disturbance during her menstrual period. Whatever the case, she succeeded in keeping Laban's teraphim away from him. Genesis 31:36-54. And Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, What is my trespass? What is my sin? That thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which was torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it, and my hand didst not require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was, and the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac, had been with me, surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God hath seen mine affliction and the labors of my hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. And Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and these cattle are my cattle. and all that thou seest is mine. And what can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come now, let us make a covenant, I and thou, and let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, Gather stones. And they took stones and made heap, and they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar Sahadathah, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, This heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, The Lord watch between me and thee, when we are absent from one another. If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, Behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread. And they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. Laban blesses his descendants, and he and Jacob part company. Genesis 31:55. And early in the morning Laban rose up, and kissed his sons and his daughters, and blessed them. And Laban departed, and returned unto his place.